And Barnaby, what about Labor denying Julie and Lisa's call for an inquiry into an on-campus anti-Semitism, combined with the PM's failure to rule out a deal with the Greens in the future? What does that tell you about Labor and Anthony Albanese's real priorities?
Well, he's no Kurt nor Chifley, is he? He's certainly not a hawk. What worries me is I know that deep down I reckon that he would like to have done it, right? What always worries me more, though, is he's too weak to do it. And this comes through more and more and more. It's the weakness of the Prime Minister, the person who says he's a great boxer, but when he gets into the ring, he'll just never, ever take a hit. He refuses to ever get in close, to ever come to the crunch and call something out. And this is what's happening. Like, someone in the back room has gotten his ear and said, if you don't do this, we'll be really unhappy with you. And then he comes out and he's going to, he's just so brave, so brave. And then, of course, he's not. What worries me about Prime Minister Albanese is he's weak, and that is becoming so abundantly clear to everybody.
Yeah, and when you're dealing with anti-Semitism, you can't equivocate and you can't be weak. You've got to be strong on it, as Peter Dutton has been. Barnaby, I want to go to another subject.
You've got to basically get to a point. There's got to, a great differentiation of people in politics is this: whether you agree with them or not, every now and then you'll see politicians and you say, mate, that might cost you your job, what you just said then, but obviously you believe in it and you're straight down the barrel. Now, respect that person, whomever they are, because they're being straight with you and there's no equivocation, therefore you're getting a clarity view of their political views and their character. But when someone's always on the side of friendliness, always on the side of, bright, puffy clouds and beautiful shining babies, but when you get a difficult issue, they're nowhere to be seen, or they're having a bet each ways, they're weak. Be careful of them.
Yeah, some good old conviction politics would be a wonderful thing to see again in this country. Speaking of convictions or lack thereof, what's going on in Victoria? The state's Energy Minister, Lily D'Ambrosio, she insisted there was no role for gas in Victoria's energy transition, and she's repeatedly said that there's a gas shortage in the state. But now, lo and behold, she's approved a new gas extraction project, the first one in 10 years.
Well, this is what happens with cults, isn't it? In the end, when the cult says that, something will descend from the clouds on a certain day and a certain day arrives and nothing descends, or the world will come to an end on a certain day and a certain day arrives and the world hasn't come to an end, then all the other constructions they've made in that cult community become apparently ridiculous and perverse. Now, what we have, and we're seeing it also with Penny Sharp, and it's the Penny Sharp in New South Wales, they are beside themselves because the power goes off there and the lifts stop in Sydney and people have to go to the bathroom in the lift that they're in with their fellow workmates because the lift doors don't work and all the traffic shuts down. That is the day that the intermittent power phenomenon will come to an end and reality will come screaming back through the door. Now, down in Victoria, they always say themselves the blue-collar manufacturing state. They'll be the rust bucket state. If they don't get some gas into the system, then what manufacturer would ever want to set up in Australia? And test that theory out if you don't believe me. Which major global manufacturer wants to move to Australia? None, because they think we're off our heads. They think we are certifiably, economically, on the economic premise, insane. We're economically insane. We're going to run an economy on a windmill and solar panels. And they just go and say, well, don't say anything to them. The Australians, they're a bit off their heads. But, just tell them they're doing a great job and it's all going to work out splendidly, and then get the hell out of there and find another country to set up in.
Indeed. Barnaby, just before you go, today marks 80 years since the Allies landed in Normandy to liberate France during World War II. You spoke earlier about the fact 3,300 Australians were involved in that operation. That's an important day to remember, isn't it?
Yeah, Australians were killed too. I think there was about 15 killed in the first day. It's incredibly important. And if you want to see people who don't put an addendum onto their focus, look at Dwight D. Eisenhower, went on, as far as I'm concerned, to be probably the greatest president of the United States. These people, what only was a totemic issue, a million troops, just think them, predominantly the United States, but also British, Polish, French, and Australian airmen. But this was to rid the world of a philosophy called fascism, where Boilermakers, fitters and turners and farmers were up against Boilermakers, fitters and turners and farmers, but just Boilermakers, fitters and turners and farmers with a polar opposite world view. And fascism believed that you can murder Jews because they were Jews, murder gypsies, murder gays, murder Russians, execute people who had a mental incapacity. It was evil personified. And what is so great about this is when great people rose up and said, we're going to deal with this. And it is certainly such an incredible day, not just for us, but in the history of mankind. One of our highest points in the 10,000 years since we crawled out of a cave and decided we could try to learn and read and write.